Part I. The sovereignty of the frayed notebook. You remember the notebook. Not a digital contact list sent to a cloud, but a physical object. It likely had a frayed spiral binding or a faded cover, filled with names and 7-digit numbers scrawled in your own messy, evolving handwriting. That notebook wasn't just stationery. It was the only thing anchoring you to your social reality. In that era, if you lost that book, or if someone moved before you could copy down their new address, they didn't just leave the neighborhood, they exited your reality entirely. For those born between 1976 and 1985, disappearing was a normal, quiet, and final part of life. We are the last generation to understand the analog fade. Today, we are going somewhere deeply personal, the people we lost. Not to tragedy, but to the simple lapse of time and the lack of a digital trail. Part II. Situational intimacy and the liminal space. Think back to those long afternoons at the park or the 7-Eleven. You didn't text to check in or share a live location. You just showed up. Whoever was there became your entire world for the next 3 hours. Psychologists refer to this as situational intimacy. Every conversation you had in 1994 existed in a true liminal space. Because there was no recording device in your pocket, your interactions were completely unrepeatable. They were known only by the people in that room or on that street corner. This provided you with information sovereignty. You owned your moments because no algorithm was indexing them for future memories or throwbacks. When you talked for hours on a landline, tethered to a wall by a curly cord, that conversation became part of your internal architecture. Your memory of that person isn't a static profile picture. It's a proprioceptive memory, the specific weight of the silence, and the sound of a voice in a quiet bedroom at 11 p.m. Part II. The Zeigarnik effect and disenfranchised grief. When those friends moved away, you became the sole custodian of a shared history that now exists in exactly one place, your mind. This creates a condition known as cognitive isolation. In 1989, researcher Kenneth Doka identified disenfranchised grief. This is a loss that society doesn't formally recognize. There is no funeral, no week off work, and no neighbor bringing food. The loss of a pre-digital friendship fits this framework perfectly. You were expected to just get on with things, but your brain didn't. This is due to the Zeigarnik effect. This psychological principle states that the human mind has a documented tendency to keep processing incomplete situations far longer than resolved ones. You aren't haunted by the friends you said a proper goodbye to. You are haunted by the ones who vanished. Your brain never received the signal that the story was over, so it keeps the loop open. For the owls, there are dozens, perhaps hundreds, of these open loops. Part IV. Spontaneous propinquity versus the algorithm. There is another layer: spontaneous propinquity. This describes how friendships form through the sheer frequency of unplanned, low-stakes physical encounters. You didn't schedule a hangout. You just existed in the same space: the record store, the arcade, the parking lot. These were your liminal friendships. They weren't always deep, but they made the world feel populated and safe. They were the social infrastructure of your youth. But the algorithm killed the liminal friend. Today, every interaction is intentional. We reach out for a reason. We comment to engage. This has led to semantic flattening. Because the physical effort to reach someone is now zero, the brain struggles to assign real emotional weight to the connection. Part V. The horror of the zombie contact. The cruelest part of the modern era is that today, nobody truly disappears. We have somber contacts, people from 15 years ago whose birthdays surface in our calendars and whose vacation photos haunt our feeds. Your brain is simultaneously grieving the friends who vanished in the 90 seconds while being overwhelmed by the ones who won't leave your digital space today. When an old name appears in your notifications, it might carry a jolt of recognition, but the algorithm doesn't give you the person. It gives you a curated performance of who they've decided to become. Your brain, which has spent 20 years holding an open loop, cannot close it around a stranger's Instagram post. The grief didn't end. It just changed shape. The modern social graph gives you access to people while removing the conditions, time, friction, and presence that made friendship possible. Part VI: the value of the unrecorded life. If you feel a deep weight when a name from 30 years ago resurfaces, that isn't a dysfunction. It is direct evidence of how fully present you were when those relationships were happening. You weren't performing for an audience. You were just there, completely, without a camera or a metric to justify the experience. You still carry the memory of what it felt like to live without a lens. Your dorsal vagal state, that physiological os which built during thousands of hours of unrecorded adolescence, is still intact. You know that a person's value isn't found in their engagement rate, and you know that silence isn't a malfunction. The open loops aren't a problem to solve. They are a record of something real. You loved people the way humans were built to love, through time, presence,